Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. As you might tell, I'm not an arborist. I have to apologize myself. Reality is even worse. My background is in IT. But today I work mainly assisting management and executive teams in defining their mission, vision, and strategy. So you will be wondering, what is this guy doing here at an arborist conference talking about leadership? Well, I hope that during the next 30 minutes I can convince you that also leadership probably has a role to play in ensuring that we have, and that's also the subtitle, healthier and longer living trees. I think you can do a lot, but probably in the way you influence others, and to ensure that others also invest effort and time in taking good care of trees can make a difference. You might also wonder, what is my link with your council? Actually, and that takes me to the book that I will present you, the book I've written on Everyone Can Lead. The profit of that book goes to a Belgian company called Tree ID. They take seedlings from, and that's just my naive, as an outside understanding of majestic old trees, and ensure our heritage when it comes down to trees. And recently they've added also a very nice, and that's more in my area of specialty. They use people who have it difficult to find a job on the labor market to assist them in taking care of trees. It's called the boomploeg in Dutch. You could call it as the tree team. And it's a group of people, again, who have difficulty finding a good job in the current labor market. And that's a really nice win-win, taking good care of the trees and taking good care of those people. So the profit of this book goes to that initiative, of which I'm very proud. Today I want to talk about leadership, and you might say, well, leadership is for big organizations and managers and directors. Well, I tend to disagree. Let's have a bit of a survey here. Let's start with the title, Everyone Can Lead. Who says, well, Frans, I fully agree. I think indeed that everyone can lead. And who says, wait a second before we raise hands, and who says, well, Frans, I have my doubts. I think we all know people who will never be able to lead. So who says, yes, everyone can lead, and okay? Few people, minority. Who says we will always have people who will not be able to lead? Yeah, the majority. Okay. Yeah, so that's not a good start for my presentation. You're not very convinced of my title. Yeah. Let me ask you another question. During the past 7 days, only the past 7 days, either in your personal life or your professional life, did at some point in time during the past 7 days, did you take the lead? So for example, if you prepared dinner and you instructed your partner, husband or wife, probably you took the lead a little bit. If you have children, I think that you probably took the lead. Maybe in a meeting with your clients, you said, well, we did the tree assessment. By the way, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. It was, for me, quite interesting. We did the tree assessment. I think we should do this. Maybe you pointed that customer in a certain direction. So think about yourself. During the past 7 days, did somehow, in some situation, you think you took the lead? Who says yes? Yeah, look around. Yeah. Well, then the conclusion is obvious. All those people that can't lead are not in this room. So they must be elsewhere. Well, actually, I think the truth and reality is a lot more convincing. Whenever two or more people meet, there's mutual influence. But very often we are not aware or conscious about this influence. We at the kitchen table at night, we talk to our partner, our children, our family, our friends. At work, we talk with people. And we certainly point those people in a certain direction. Or the other way around. Those people point you in a certain direction. But it's done very unconsciously. And that brings me to the definition that I used in this book, where I say leadership, it's a process of self-awareness. You should be aware of how do I influence people. If we talk about the health of trees, am I able to convince them to support this, or am I on the contrary, causing a different reaction? So it's about self-awareness and positive influence. In organizations, we say geared to bringing out the best in oneself and others, and I will come back to that. I think It's always a combination of trying to achieve your target, but at the same time also finding, what's the objective of your customer, of the partner. If you're talking to governments or cities like Antwerp about trees, what are their interests? And how do you find this match between your interest and their interest? And that's a balancing act always. So I say it's a process of self-awareness and positive influence, geared to bring out the best in oneself and others. So if today I work with the city of Antwerp, I need to think of what does the city of Antwerp want? How can I support the objectives of the city of Antwerp? And at the same time, how can I support, my objective and your common objective, again, which is the health of trees. Any questions about this definition? By the way, there's no rocket science in the book. It's all very much common sense. Okay, let's have a closer look at positive influence. Question for you. You're together with another person. What needs to be present in that relationship before you are willing to follow that person? So you're together with someone. What needs to be present in that relationship before? Trust. Yeah. That's always an easy exercise. I never got a different answer. Maybe if we go to Asia, that's a bit of a different culture, we get different answers. But trust is definitely there, and we will talk about trust. What else makes it easier to follow someone else? Respect, definitely. Yeah, if I respect someone, it's very much about values. Knowledge, yeah, we will get to that. Knowledge goes into trust. There's a very famous American, I would say, management advisor, Covey, has written a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I have to be careful here. It's very US, but it's very good. So it's very down to earth. And he says trust is equal part character, equal part competence. And that's true. If tomorrow you have to go to the hospital, I hope nobody has to go to the hospital. But before you trust the doctor, you hope that your doctor is competent. If you get the assistant who is just out of medical school, it might be nice if the more experienced doctor is present. So trust indeed is character and competence. Yeah. What else? Respect, trust. What else? Makes it. In what way? Professionalism. Yeah, that to me goes into competence. Yeah. Experience. Yeah. Also competence. Yeah. Empathy. Absolutely. Yeah. Look at the mountaineer. If tomorrow you go on a mountain trip and you say, well, I guess if I listen to you 6 hours in trees, that seems, I guess you're all in pretty good physical shape. But if you're not in such a good physical shape, you hope that your guide will take that into account and doesn't start off after 5 minutes with an incredible steep climb, 1,000 meters, that you can't make it. So it's good if indeed the one that you have to follow, or the one who takes the lead, takes into account your interest. That's also in our personal lives. You trust someone if you have the feeling that that person will take into account your interest, not only their interest. And that's again that balancing act that I talked about. And if I refer back to your profession is, yes, we're working for the good of the trees, but you also have to think of, what's their interest and how do we make this balance. Thank you very, very much. Very good, yeah. What else? Leadership. Yeah, what do you mean by leadership? What is leadership?
How the person is communicating with everyone else and how many respect, how good he is listening, and those things.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of good elements. It's about listening also. You can only know what someone else wants if you listen. Leadership is not so much about voicing your own opinion. It's very much listening about what are all the opinions around the table and then trying to find a way to move forward. Of course, you can bring your own objectives into the game. And that brings me maybe to what I think, and we will show what I have defined in Everyone Can Lead. Also, it's a vision. Where do you want to go? It's easier if you want to follow someone that you know that you can contribute to something that you value too. And that's about, I would say also, it's about meaning, it's about purpose. What's your purpose? If I like your purpose, if your purpose is very much aligned with my purpose, then we'll probably get along fine. If you have a different purpose, it becomes more difficult. Yeah.
Also, I can be fascinated by somebody, and maybe with no rational reasons, but just because it's charming or Yes, something more emotional.
It's more emotional. There's a lot about values. But, I mean, you say, oh, that the person is very optimistic, has a good sense of humor, and you think that that is important, so that already creates a link. Yeah. And that's about, you know, it's about respect, it's about values, and that's also where diversity comes into play, which is not always easy. I can say honestly to you, if you want to become a management consultant, be happy that a lot of teams don't get along because there is so much diversity. The diverse teams are the most powerful, but at the same time, the diverse teams are the teams that I see most often because people get frustrated, get irritated by the diversity. You know, there's a lack of understanding. So it's a fine line, but it's important. The 5 elements that I defined in this book. By the way, in this book, there are only 2 guiding principles. And this is guiding principle number 1. Before someone else will follow you, before you can work together with your client, with the city, with the country, with someone else, there needs to be this positive connection. And positive connection is what we just defined. It's about trust. And when I define trust, again, there's no rocket science. It's about honesty and integrity. You want to get a straightforward opinion. Well, that would lead me too far. Sometimes people say that's obvious. It's not that obvious. You can be honest and honest. Maybe by the writing of my name, you can see that I have Dutch roots. Do we have any Dutch people in the room? There we have. Yeah, they will not blame me that sometimes we Dutch can be a little bit blunt. Direct, we say, we're direct. But compared to other cultures, we are. There's a difference between saying everything and being very blunt and being honest. So there are a number of items that come into play. We can talk about culture, but that would lead us too far. It's about being consistent. Consistent is, you know, you say what you do, and these days also, you do what you say, and these days in the virtual world, you also say what you do. And very often we don't see each other. If you want to have trust, you need to tell others what you do. You walk the talk, as they say in the US or the UK. You set the example. That gives us trust. As we said, take into account the interests of others and being competent. Being competent also means that if there's something you don't know, and it's linked to honesty, you should be able to say, well, that's something that I don't know. That also creates trust. If you talk with people who know everything, that usually doesn't build a lot of trust. The second part is respect. All respect starts with self-respect. That could be a workshop, a 2-day workshop if you want to. What is self-respect? But I do think we all have our challenges sometimes when it comes to self-respect. Respect for identity and diversity, that's something that we talked about. Try to see the added value of a different opinion instead of getting irritated. Not always easy, because very often by nature we might get frustrated. Some courtesy and humility, I think it is in the right place. What I think is very important is, as you said, listening to others and trying to find the intention. I've been, I think now in business for 35 years. I try to stay naive in the sense that, and although we see exceptions on the political field these days, but I try to assume that everybody has a positive intent. That's usually a good starting point, because I might not agree with how people want to achieve their goal. I might not agree with what outcome I would like to see, but you know, if I try to find the intent, what's your intention? You know, what do you want to achieve? Where do you want to go? Then we can have a meaningful discussion. And that's sometimes easier to get past all the frustration because we have different values, we have different skills, we have different personalities. What I added also is recognition. It's nice if you work with someone and if you have to follow someone is that you get some recognition. Recognition is about knowing what is important for the other person, observing it, and appreciating. The book, by the way, exists in 3 languages. Do we have any French-speaking people here? No? There we are. Okay. There we go. In French, it's very nice. They use the word reconnaître. It's a bit like recognition. The fact that I recognize what you do already gives recognition. I have 2 daughters, 25 and 19. There was a time when I had to walk into the rooms and it was one big mess. Just by stating that, wow, there's no mess today, or put it in a positive way, your room looks really tidy. Just recognizing it without giving a compliment is already giving the recognition. But that requires time and effort, and time, we don't always have time today. We're always in a rush. The 4th element, before we go on, is autonomy, very important. If you work with someone is to be clear on what is your autonomy, what is my autonomy. Again, a topic that I encounter still today. A lot of frustration exists around, you know, I think this is my playing field, and you think this is also your playing field, and we get into trouble because we don't talk about it. It's a bit like going on a multi-sports terrain somewhere where you have all the different lines and the different colors, and I go into the field with a volleyball and you go into the field with a basketball. We're going to be in trouble. So sometimes it's good, even if we think it's obvious, to talk about what are you going to do, what is my responsibility. And there also, I think, if you work with governments, if you work with cities, if you work with your clients, it's very important to say, okay, you know, this is where my responsibility and my skills end, and how do we work together. And finally, purpose. As we said, you know, what's the purpose? And I think you have a wonderful purpose. If not, I you know, wouldn't be so supportive of 3ID, the Boomploeg, etc. I think you do really, really very important work. That's an easy one for you. I think a lot of big companies find it much more difficult to have a purpose these days that attracts other people. But then it's very often also translating it to their environment. I think most people will agree that taking care of our trees is very important. But then what does it mean for them? What's in it for them? How does it impact their lives? How can they make a contribution? Any questions on positive connection? It's a bit of a flyover, 30 minutes over the book. Then we get to bringing out the best. A quick question again. We talk about leadership here. Let's see what leadership styles you know. What kind of leadership styles do you know? What would be the best leadership style? What's the best way to influence those other people?
Giving a good example.
Giving a good example, yeah. That's what we call one leadership type. There's a lot of books around walking the talk, management by example, yeah. What other leadership styles do you know? Supportive leadership. There's a lot to do these days around supportive leadership. Usually those people tend to invert the hierarchy and they say, as a CEO, as a managing director, I'm there to support the people who are, you know, out in the field, on the terrain, etc., etc. They do the daily work. Interesting model, very popular these days.
Positive reinforcement?
Positive reinforcement, yeah. A bit of, you know, it's kind of, you know, build on talent management. I build on talents, and I reinforce those talents, yeah. What other leadership styles?
I would say overview, being the compass.
Yeah, being the compass, setting the vision, more of the visionary leadership, yeah, yeah. We like that sometimes, a clear vision.
The ability to motivate.
The ability to motivate, kind of motivational leadership, indeed, focusing on motivation, yeah. So what would be the best leadership style?
Combination, all those competencies.
Okay, a combination, all those competencies, yeah, you're close. So
Depending on the purpose, the mix might change.
that's what I'm looking for. It depends on two things. What does it depend on? It depends on, one,
The people I deal with.
the people you deal with, the situation, the context. Yeah, what's the context? Sorry?
Accept your group help.
Yeah, also, yeah. That's also a very good point. So it's the context is one, that's 50%, but there's another 50%. Yourself, yeah. It depends on who you are, your authentic self. If you're more of a supportive person, it will be very difficult for you to become a very directive leader. The opposite is also true. If you're a very directive leader, it might be more difficult to become a supportive leader. So you need to have some self-awareness to say, what's my leadership style? Am I more supportive? Do I think in talents? Do I set a vision? Etc. And what is needed in this situation? Think of a police officer. A police officer who has to intervene in a fight on the street probably needs to display some assertive leadership skills. If the same police officer 1 hour later is involved in a traffic or a car crash and he has to support the people coming out of the car crash, there might be a lot more empathy involved. So it depends on the situation and it depends on yourself. And that's what I call the second guiding principles. It's what I call authentic adaptability. And that too is something that you have to reflect on. And again, half an hour is too short to do this exercise. I will show you a model that you can use. But it's looking at, okay, what is happening in this situation? Who is around the table? And what kind of leadership do I need to apply? Tomorrow, we're in this magnificent room here in the city of Antwerp. And tomorrow you have to work together with the city of Antwerp and you're meeting some people who work for the city of Antwerp, then the question is, what is their aim? What is their objective? You know, where are we going to? What do the different people bring to the table? Some people might bring a lot of drive to the table. Others are maybe very critical. That's also, you know, asking tough questions. That usually increases the quality. So what do you need to bring to the table? To make connection and to get everyone in a direction that, again, reinforces that positive connection. There are 3 questions when you talk about authentic adaptability. Those are 3 basic questions that I come across a lot. I don't do it anymore, but when I did career coaching, a lot of career coaching, still do it every once in a while, is what are your talents? Be clear about what is my strength. Is it, for example, my technical knowledge? I assume there is an incredible amount of technical knowledge in this room. Is it showing empathy? Is it having a clear vision? Whatever. What are my talents? The second question, more difficult, what do I want? I see a lot of people struggling at all ages with this question of what do I want? And that changes during your lifetime. When you're, whatever, 30, you might think, well, you know, I want to rent or buy a house, so maybe the financial aspect is different. Today, if I look at myself, you know, at 58, I guess different things are important. So what do you want? And finally, who am I? You know, what are my natural skills, my natural preferences, etc. I use one model, and I'm going to briefly go through it. This is just to tease you a little bit. Again, half an hour is too short to make a self-analysis, but it can show you if you want to dive into it, and you can do this through the book. Did someone ever took a personality test, like an MBTI or an Insights, or? Yeah, I see a few people nodding. Yeah, Insights, MBTI. Yeah, or DISC, or you have many. Many of those models are based on what Carl Jung, the psychologist, said. And Carl Jung made a difference between 3 dimensions. Now it gets a little bit scientific. One is, to what extent are you introverted or extroverted? The easiest way to answer that question is, where do you get your energy from? If you're tired, do you want to be alone and read a book? Or do you say, I go out with a few friends and have a few beers? The one is introverted. I want to be on my couch reading a book. The other one is extroverted. On Sunday morning, I go out with my bike for 2 hours on my own. I don't want to talk to anyone. My wife, who's on the extroverted side, says, I'm going to run with a few friends. And I run for 1 hour and I talk for 2 hours. That's how we recharge our batteries. Need to make it visual a little bit. The other dimension is, how do you make decisions? Are you more of a thinking person, a rational person? Are you more of a feeling person? The rational person, and I'm exaggerating, but just to give you a clear idea, goes out to buy a car, says, what's the price? What's the consumption? What's the CO2 or the carbon monoxide emission? What's the insurance cost? How much luggage can I take along, etc. What does an insurance cost? That's a very rational way of deciding on a car. The emotional way is, have you seen that car that the neighbor has bought? It's so wonderful, especially in that color. I'm going to ask his advice. Are you satisfied with your car? Oh my God, yes, he or she is satisfied with the car. I think it's really good. The price? Oh, I haven't looked at the price yet. Again, I'm exaggerating. We all have those elements in us. We all have thinking and feeling to take decisions. We all have extraversion and introversion. The third dimension is a bit more difficult. It's about how do you perceive the world. A tree is a nice example. Sometimes I use a picture and then you have a park with a few trees and the sun. And then I ask the sensing people, what do you see? And they say, I see green grass, I see 2 trees, I see 1 plane in the air, and there's a person laying on the grass. If I ask it to someone who is more intuitive, he says, well, that's a nice summer evening. And people are having fun. Nobody says it's a summer evening. Nobody says they're having fun. But that's more interpretation. That's where a lot of people interpret. And then, of course, if you combine those 3 dimensions, that's basic math, course in basic math on a Friday afternoon, you get 8 types. You get, on the one hand, and that's just to give you a first idea of what your leadership style might be, those people who are extraverted thinkers. And then you have people who are sensing, who are very much in the present. They're very driven, they're very efficient, pragmatic, decisive, delegation and control, problem solver. In the company world, we would call them chief operation officer. We need to do it now, etc., drive, delegate, etc. If you get the more intuitive extroverted thinkers, you still have the same assertive, straightforward, ambitious, target-oriented, but they're also very bold and competitive. That's where you find the typical, and again, I'm oversimplifying, but just to give you the idea, the CEOs who are very entrepreneurial. They're not afraid of taking a risk. They're not afraid every once in a while to cut a corner. They're the ones who, late at night, they're in front of a red traffic light and they say, well, there's nobody coming. That traffic light doesn't make sense, you know, and I don't know if you recognize yourself, be careful. Then we go into the extroverted feeling types, where I say you have inspirational leadership. Someone said it's about motivating people, absolutely. There you have the motivators. There you have the Martin Luther Kings. I have a dream that one day this nation, and they inspire a whole crowd. Thank God PowerPoint wasn't invented yet when Martin Luther King was speaking, because it would have been a different story, probably not so inspiring. They're innovative, they're enthusing, mobilizing, charismatic, motivating, dynamic. All these types also have their pitfalls, but again, we won't go there. If you want to see them, you can see them in the book. But they're the ones who go around, who motivate people, who inspire people, who have a deep belief of where they want to go, and their enthusiasm takes along other people. And then we move down to the more sensing, extroverted. Those are the networkers, the team builders, the ambassadors. I would say also the diplomats. Probably in your profession also very important, because they're very good at bringing together people. Today, and I can share this, I think I'm doing some work for the Belgian Federation of Notaries, the Federatie van Notarissen. And you know, they have a number of good people who are very good at this, because they have to take into account what the notary wants, what the political powers expect, what we as citizens expect, etc., etc. So they bring together people. Serving leadership, then we go into the introverted side. That's what we talked about, the servant leadership. Very supportive, very loyal, very inventive, considerate, empathy, very democratic. The ideal decision for such a leader is what kind of decision? A decision by consensus. We always try to make sure that everybody is happy, which usually doesn't always work. That's a pitfall then. If you look at the differences, sometimes the directive leaders will sacrifice the people to get the result. If we go into the introverted feeling leaders, they sometimes sacrifice the result to have everybody happy. Again, there's no good or bad. Sometimes people tell me that France, you know, directive leadership is out. We don't do that anymore. Well, unfortunately, we sometimes need it. I usually give the example of the fire brigade. If you have a fire at night in your house, and you know the fire truck comes along, and the captain gets out, you know, and practices participative leadership and goes, "Hey guys, what do you want to do tonight? Shall we do a little brainstorm and take a joint decision? And your house is on fire. You probably would like some directive leadership." So be careful, because these days the whole participative leadership, supportive leadership is very much in. It has its values depending on the situation. And finally, and I hope this brief overview will give you an indication of where you think you are, and we all possess multiple skills. There's the thinking, the introverted thinking. Somehow, without prejudice, if I would have to make a guess, I would think there are a few of you over there. And I can say this because I come from IT, and myself, I'm very much over there. We're the ones who are thinking. We are the ones who are, as you said, processing a lot of data. And you know, that's what we like to do. The intellectual challenge is sometimes what drives us. And that's what we're good at. We take a lot of data, and based on the data, we determine the vision. That's a strategic leadership. We're leader expert, we're tactical, we're calm, we're detailed, we're precise, etc. We're focused. And we get to the strategic and to the visionary leadership. But we all have multiple styles. The only difference is that some styles come very natural, and other styles are a bit more difficult. Very often people ask me, "Frans, what's the best style?" There is none. The only thing that's an advantage is if you have the flexibility or what we call style flexibility, if you can flex your style a little bit based on the situation. If you're in front of someone who is very much a driver, and you come up with, yes, but the people will not be happy, and you know, blah, 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 that message is probably not gonna come across. So I guess my only advice for today is, look at who is in front of you. Look at who you are working with, and how do you maybe need to adapt your style a little bit. A few years ago, I worked with an HR manager of a big company who had a lot of what we call the green participative leadership. He wrote a long email to the managing director saying, we need this leadership program, and these are all the wonderful advantages. The employees are going to be happy, the managers are going to be happy, we will have a wonderful, good culture, etc. And at the last point, he said, what do you think? During the weekend, we get the mail back. What's in the mail back? Mail from the CEO. Yes. Not, dear Bart, not kind regards, I will not mention his name, John, let's say. Yes. So this HR manager is all confused. He said, this is going wrong. And he goes to the CEO and he said, I'm a bit confused. You know, I said, what do you think? And you say, yes, that's not an answer. He says, yes, it is. Yes, I agree. Yes, I will support you. Yes, you can start. I don't see what is. That's how style differences. And that's, what you need to adapt, be able to, well, you don't need. What you can adapt to is to flex your style and say, look at the situation, who is at the table. 2 minutes, is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Look at who is at the table and look at what energy do I need to bring at this table. Can I use my natural energy to get people along and bring it back to your theme in taking good care of our trees? Or do I need to take a slightly different approach? And that's getting out of your comfort zone. Getting out of your comfort zone is always a bit scary. Don't do it with your most important client and the most political sensitive topic the first time. Do it with little steps. But I think there's benefit. And in that sense, I get back to the title and I say, yes, everyone can lead. And then, to me, the key question is really, what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of influence do you want to have in your environment? I very much, if I can say so, like your example with students, I think that's very inspiring. I think it's very inspiring to take students along, and I think that's also a form of leadership. Being in front of a class is leadership. By the way, I would very much like to sometimes get the opportunity to talk to what we call the onderwijskoepels, in the educational system in Belgium. But there's a lot of leadership in educating kids and other people. So what kind of influence do you want to be? Do you want to inspire those people? Do you want to take them along in a certain direction that also serves their needs? Do you want to be supportive? It's also a form of leadership. The fact is that you decide what you bring to the table. So that's kind of the last question that I want to leave you with. It's a bit of a brief overview. I hope I was able to make a little bit the link with the work you do, which I think is wonderful, and I guess my only wish would be the more people you can influence to go along in your wonderful work, I think the better the result is. And if you want to buy the book, I know it sounds a little bit commercial, you don't have to, I don't feel obliged, but you can find it on Amazon, Lano, etc., etc. Remember that you're supporting a good tree ID cause here in Belgium, because again, the profits go to this company and the Boomploeg and their effort. Any questions before we release you out into the Antwerp wild? This is the last session, isn't it? Yeah.
No,
there's
one more.
Oh, one more. I'm sorry. Yeah, before we move over to the next session. Yeah. That was misleading. Yeah, thank you. Very good. You've paid attention. Thank you. Yeah, keeps me sharp. Any questions, remarks?
It's the last, this kind.
Of this kind. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
For my students, I have one golden rule I never break, and it's about never demotivate them, or if they have motivation, never always empower this. How do you, I don't know, put that rule into your expose and your presentation?
That would be a very interesting topic indeed. How do you make sure that you don't demotivate people? Even if sometimes, that's what I'm going to add, You think that, you know, it's a bit idealistic, it might not be realistic. I think that is very important. It's not up to us to kill the idealism. And that sometimes happens when you get a bit older and we get more realistic and we say, well, forget about that, that's never going to work. You don't know that. You don't know how convincing people can be. If there's one thing that I believe in is that people can do a lot more than sometimes they think and what we think. And I think that's, who said it's the building on this talent. I'm going to make a very strange comparison, but have you ever looked at those television shows on Britain's Got Talent, US Got Talent, and people get on stage where the whole audience goes like, my God, this is going to be terrible, and that person sings or does something and it's incredible. I think you always have to assume that is there, yeah. So I think that is very important, yeah. If they have to find out, you know, let them find out themselves. And that's always a bit of a balancing act. You don't want people to crash. So if somebody starts off on a project and you know this is going to be a hard crash, then you might want to intervene a little bit. But a soft crash is a learning experience also. It's a bit of, if you go, whatever sports, if you go on a bike, if you go skiing, if you're going to learn, you're going to fall. I think, and if you're a leader, you want to give that opportunity to people, but you also want to avoid that people end up in hospital and seriously injured. So that's kind of the balance to me. Sorry for the, you know, just a 2-minute answer into a very good question. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I hope it was interesting, and I wish you good luck with the rest of your seminar.
Thank you to you.
Thank you.